All right, looks like we are live on Standing for Truth. My name is Donny, and I am your host and moderator for tonight's debate between Dr. Dino and David Emery. Tonight, we are debating evolution, but to be specific, we are debating the geologic column and transitional fossils. Gentlemen, thank you so much for giving us your time for this continuation in our now 2023 Evolution Debate Challenge series. David, it's been a little while since you've been here. And so before we get into some opening statements, how have you been? A little bit about yourself and a little bit about your channel.
I've been doing really good. I've been kind of taking it easy, so not much has changed on my channel. I haven't posted anything in a while. But I'm out here in New Mexico. Unfortunately, it's pretty cold here. It was about 32 today, so for us, that's pretty cold. And that's about it.
David, I've got you beat. It's 0 degrees here, so just a little bit colder where I'm at than where you're at. David, hopefully you've come handy with your Patrick doll. And I know Dr. Kent, the science gent, is equipped with good old SpongeBob. So there we go. A debate is not complete without SpongeBob. So Kent, good to have you back, brother. A couple weeks ago, we did the 2022 Evolution Debate Challenge series in review. And now we've got several debates for you in the next, in the coming week. So how have you been? A little bit about yourself, a little bit about Dal.
Well, I'm doing great. God's been good. I'm at Dinosaur Adventureland, DAL, in Lenox, Alabama, straight north of Pensacola, 70 miles. Come on up. It's all free. Visitors from all over. Had some from Arizona today. We gave them a tour and showed them how Grand Canyon probably formed in a week, not millions of years, and how the geologic column does not exist anywhere except the textbooks. So we like talking about straightening people out on the truth. God's word is true. God made everything in 6 days. We have 140 acres. It's all free. Come camp out. Stay in one of our cabins. After a couple of days, though, we put you to work. Whole place built by volunteers and donations, and we just want to give God the glory for his creation, what we're trying to do. Hundreds of science lessons. It's a blast. Come on down. David, you're welcome anytime. Go ahead.
Awesome. Kent, thank you so much for the intro. Good to have you back. For the audience sake, again, tonight's topic, to be specific, is transitional fossils and the geologic column. So this is going to be a fun one. Interesting topics. For sure, it's going to be a little bit more formal than the last several debates we've been doing. We are still going to get some discussion, of course, but to set the foundation and to lay out the arguments for tonight with David being in the affirmative, we are going to have 12-minute opening statements, and then we'll have 8-minute rebuttals, and then we'll get into some discussion, and then we'll get you guys in the audience involved a little bit. We'll have some audience questions and answers. And so please just make sure you're tagging me with your questions at Standing for Truth, and that way I don't miss them. Okay, David, with that, we are just going to get right into the fun. I've got your slides up, David. And so when you're ready, I'll start your timer. Once you hit the 10-minute mark, I'll let you know. 2 minutes left, and then that way you know to kind of start winding things down.
Okay, I'll try to get through this. We're doing transitional forms. Whoops. Oh, what did I do?
Okay. Yeah. There you go. Okay. If you click it, then it'll kind of refresh. You'll be able to move through your slides, David. So you're good to go.
Okay. So first of all, I have just a little beef here. Kent completely waives off every field of science that he runs into. And in fact, in the most recent debate with Jackson Rowe, he took 5 minutes out of his time to tell all of his viewers that geology is a waste of time and money, and that you shouldn't get a degree in geology. And here is the earnings potential for that degree, I think that's totally out of line, and you should be spending your time. If you want to talk about creation, you can do that, but don't be teaching your youth not to go to college. So you always have these Hovindisms, I'm going to call them, where you say all Grand Canyon layers were added at one time. They're all the same age. Then you also say, and you just did the top layer come from outer space? Shuffle the cards. Now, is the top card younger? The Big Bang is an explosion, and then all these others. You cannot tell anything about a fossil except it died. So imagine I'm a forensic investigator. I go in and I tell the grieving wife, we can't tell you anything about your husband except that he died. So here's an example of why it doesn't come from outer space. So here you see a bunch of layers for road construction. They start off with the subgrade, and they have to grade that, get all the rocks out. Then they put down the subbase gravel or whatever it is, and they have to lay that out, smooth it out with graders, compact it with those soil compacting machines. They add a base course, which again is gravel or sand, and they have to compact it. And then, of course, they add a surface, which is asphalt. And then they come out with this machine that sprays an oil on top of that. And of course, they can only do about a block or so at a time, and then they move on to the next part. And so my question to you, Kent, is where does the asphalt layer come from? Outer space? Those layers cannot be changed. You can't pull out the gravel layer and say, we're going to shuffle it up to the top, or geez, I forgot the sand, so let's slip a sand layer in there. You can't do that. Once the layers are there, they're there, and you're stuck with it. So you'll want to figure out where that asphalt layer comes from. The next thing I wanted to say is that you have to have sedimentation first before you can dig a hole. You go out in your field out there behind your church with a shovel and you dig a hole, but you can't dig a hole if there's a hole already there. You can't. So the sedimentation has to take place. The rocks have to be there. It's solid rock. And then the canyon is formed. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the stratigraphic column. You always call it the geologic column. Most geologists call it the stratigraphic column because it's stratigraphic layers. So you see here, I'm sure you've seen this 100 times. The problem that you have with this is that you think all those layers were laid down at the same time. all those fossils over there somehow just wave themselves into place somewhere, and it doesn't matter where. But it's not like that. So the geologic column and the fossil record go together. And this geologist may take his laptop out into the field, pull up a little database application, and he starts at the bottom of the layers, and he'll start taking notes, and he'll take samples. He'll enter into this database whatever this Bright Angel shale is. It's a shale. The particle sizes, he'll enter that in. He measures the height of that layer. In this case, it's like 340 feet for the shale. And then, he may add all kinds of information here, and then he'll go back down the canyon, take some samples, different rocks. He'll go back up where he was, take some samples, go up the canyon, take some samples, all of this same layer. It all goes into a sack, and it gets labeled, and then he goes back to the laboratory. So all of this stuff works together, and it's all has to do with one location. You're not going to find your stratigraphic column that includes every single layer that exists on the planet. You're going to find in the Grand Canyon, here is the layers that the Grand Canyon stratigraphic column is made of. Here is the description. Here are the fossils that I found. You'll notice if you go through these fossils that stromatolites were found at the bottom, and then trilobites, shells above that, and then they get into more recent fossils. I want you to notice that there are 3 of those layers that I marked there called the terrestrial group. I called it a terrestrial group because those are land layers. The Coconino sandstone in particular, it was arid desert sand dunes that were laid out and became sandstone. And then there's layers above that. So that's that. And then I wanted to show you, that red line that I drew there is called the Great Unconformity. In geology, that great unconformity is a huge amount of time where there are no rock layers. They're missing, and so you can find that unconformity all over the world, everywhere. It's there. Todd Wood, which I think you already know from Answers in Genesis, says that this could be the time point of a global flood that wiped out all of these rock layers. I want to show you here on the left is a formation in Norway, right about where that teacher's hand is the Great Unconformity. And then over on the right is our familiar Grand Canyon. and the great unconformity is labeled there. The next thing is this thing about radiometric dating. I wanted you to see again on the left-hand side, this is the Grand Canyon, and those red dots on there are where they took samples. So you can see they take many samples out of each layer, and then they run these radiometric analyses on
1 minute.
depositional zircon. So that's where this comes from. They don't just take one or two and then throw out one that doesn't match. The next thing is on the other side is more radiometric dating, and you can see in the text down there that they took 10,000 stratigraphic zircons to do this dating. So again, they take much more than just one or two samples and then throw away the one. Nathaniel Jensen from Answers in Genesis says, God created man in his own image. In light of that fact, if you think about that, we would be justified in looking to the products of human design to try and understand the principles that God might have employed in designing life. Since human design transitional forms, why wouldn't God do so as well? And I'll stop there.
Thank you very much there, David. I gave you an extra minute just to make sure you got through your points there. And
I appreciate that.
No worries. And so to be fair, we are going to give Kent, you've got 13 minutes for your opening arguments and response here. So whenever you're ready, Kent, the floor is yours.
Excuse me here. I got too many things open at once here. Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. You said several things that I wave off areas of science. You are completely mistaken, David. I love science. The word science means knowledge. What do we know? We know cows produce cows. We know that. We do not know that cows came from an amoeba. That's not science. I'm not against astronomy. I'm not against biology. I taught biology for 15 years. I love biology. Evolution has nothing to do with science. Evolution is not part of the science curriculum. Now, you mentioned several things. I won't have time to cover all of them. Let me get to right here, debates. Okay, right there, Alt-DV. Let's talk about this geologic column. The textbooks show this picture like this, similar to what you showed. They say the bottom, the Archean era, is 2.5 billion years old. And then the Holocene era is 10,000 years old. Where was this material that makes up the Holocene era for 2.5 billion years? Where are these layers coming from? The layers are not different ages. Is this new material coming from outer space? I ask this all the time. I never get a good answer. You didn't give a good answer. How can the layers be different ages? If you shuffle a deck of cards, is the top card younger? No. And moving it from here to here or here to here does not change the age of it. Are the molecules of dirt that make up the Holocene era, where were they for 2.5 billion years? If the whole Earth was created 2.5 billion years ago, or 4.6 billion, whatever number they want to give, always not enough time. Yeah, not enough time. Every speck of dirt on the planet's the same age, unless it was hiding someplace in outer space and came down here. Even then, it would be the same age. It's just simply baloney. There is no geologic column. It does not exist anywhere. Okay. The fictitious guides their thinking. This fiction, the geologic column, guides their whole thinking about life. This is the Bible to the evolutionist. If you shake a jar of dirt, is the top layer younger? No. All the layers are in at the same time. How can the top layer be younger? Did it come from outer space? I keep asking. And then you mentioned, let's see, about Grand Canyon. Let me get over to this one here. I got too many things going at the same time. Sorry about that. I got 13 minutes. Oh, forgot to start my clock. There. The geologic column, does not exist any place in the world except in the textbook. It is pure fiction. There, Alt DV. I'm on the wrong one here, I think. Randy, help me out here. I got to shut this one down. No, I'll just go on this one, okay? The layers all form quickly in one big flood. We shake this thing up, it makes many, many layers in minutes. See, what you guys don't understand, the Bible says the scoffers at the end of time would be ignorant of the creation and the flood and the coming judgment of God. The moon pulls the water up and lets it back down on the earth. The tides go up and down. But if the tides aren't just going up and down, if the moon's pulling the water up, it's sucking it in from the sides to fill the bump. If the earth were covered in water and there were no continents to interrupt them, the tide would go up and down about 200 feet. It'd be a harmonic tide on the earth. During Noah's flood, the tide's probably going up and down 200 feet. Right now, the Bay of Fundy, Canada, has the world's record. I think 106 feet is the greatest tidal change they've seen. Typically, Florida, 5 or 6 feet. Well, if the water's coming up 200 feet, where's all the water coming from to fill the bump? Sideways. Moon's gravity is sucking it in at the same speed the Earth is turning from one direction. And at the equator, the Earth is turning 1,037 miles an hour, depending on your altitude. At the North Pole, it turns 0. So if the water's coming into that bump at hundreds of miles an hour, it's going to make layers forming sideways. I challenge all of you evolutionists to Google the principles in stratigraphy. No, what's the name of that one, Randall? The guy in Colorado? What is it? Experiments in stratification. Some French guy did that. Excellent, showing how that water moving sideways forms 8 or 10 layers at the same time. The geologic column is the Bible for the evolutionists. It's only found in the textbooks. There is no geologic column. Once in a while, they admit it. If there were a column of sediments, unfortunately, no such column exists. If the geologic column existed in one place, it'd be 100 miles thick. My question would still be, where's the new material coming from? Is the Earth being built up in layers from outer space? Your story about the blacktop and how they do highways is interesting, but they're bringing the layers from the Earth to another spot on the Earth. They're not changing the age of any of them. It's true they build them up in layers. I live in a gravel pit. They mined gravel and sand and clay out of here for years, and they used it to make roads. We have county roads all over here. And they put down a base layer and then a gravel layer and then a asphalt layer. You are correct. But all those layers are the same age. When they were laid down is different. It got to be put down in order. But the geologic column, you're claiming that the fossils found in a certain layer are a different age. They can't be. All the dirt's the same age. The fossils would be sorted in these layers a little bit based upon their habitat. I would predict probably clams are found at the bottom usually because clams are already at the bottom. That's where they live. They're going to be the first ones buried in a flood. It had nothing to do with evolution. Clams being a simple creature, they're not a simple creature. And clams that are petrified closed like this one are an indication they were buried alive. We have hundreds of these in our museum here. Come on down, David, I'll give you a tour. Petrified closed clams are found all over the world, including the top Mount Everest. So the clams are found at the bottom for multiple reasons. They're already at the bottom when the flood starts. They can't run very fast, so that maybe the animals are sorted a little bit based upon mobility or based upon their intelligence. As far as we know, clams aren't too smart. It might be based upon their body density. Clam shells are a little heavier than bird feathers. Birds would tend to be found on top only because birds can evade drowning till the last minute. They can fly around till they run out of gas, and they have hollow feathers, hollow bones, they float. Of course they're found on top. Has nothing to do with evolution. But you guys claim by putting some animals in order that one evolves slowly to the next. There's no such thing. Nobody ever sees any animal produce a different kind. And your statement about, what does the detective tell the grieving wife about her husband? All we can tell is he died. Well, that's not true. You might be able to tell how he died and when he died. But what I say about the fossils, if you find a fossil, you cannot tell if it had any children. Could the detective look at that dead husband and say, wow, he had 7 children? Could he tell that grieving wife, your husband had 7 children that were different than human? They were slightly changing to something else. We don't see any animal today change to anything else. Why on earth do you guys think it happened why could a bone do something that no animal today can do? I don't understand how you cannot see it, but obviously you can't. Okay, let me shut this one down here. I'm on the wrong presentation is the problem. Okay, there we go. Debates, Alt DV. Geologic column, polystrata fossils. All over the world, thousands and thousands of trees are found petrified, standing up, running through all these layers. You guys are claiming the layers are different ages. I would like to ask, how long does a dead tree stand up in your neighborhood before it falls down? They die on our property all the time. We got pine trees by the thousands here and oak trees. If a tree dies, within a couple of years, it falls down. But polystrata fossils, trees running through all these layers that you claim are different ages, are not they're not unique. There are thousands of them. How can a petrified tree be found standing up, running through layers that you claim are different ages? Stop and think. All those layers had to form in less than a year while the tree was standing there. Petrified standing tree trunks found in Yellowstone National Park. It's a common fossil. A friend of mine in North Alabama here works in a coal mine. He said, we find them all the time. Petrified trees standing up, running through different seams of coal. He's going to try to save one for me when I can get up there and get permission to go in the coal mine and get one. But it wouldn't matter. You guys want so badly for that geologic column to be true that you will ignore all evidence to the contrary, because that is your Bible. You believe the layers are different ages. There's the coal mine in central Alabama. Petrified trees standing up, running through from one seam of coal to the rock to the next seam of coal. Now you claim that a seam of coal is made from trees that got squeezed and pressed down. I agree. Vegetation under pressure will turn to coal. And then they'll say there had to be layers of dirt form on top, and then a whole new forest has to grow, and that layer gets squished to make the different layers. Well, I'm sorry, this is just baloney. When you get petrified trees that are coming through the Blue Creek Formation of coal and the Mary Lee Formation, and they go through both. You have trees indicating clearly both layers of coal form quickly, and all the dirt in between form quickly. The whole geologic column does not exist. Specimen Ridge, Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming, 27 layers of forest, Specimen Ridge. They have trees standing up, petrified, running through all the layers. Those trees didn't grow there. Most of them don't have any roots. They were ripped out by Noah's flood, floated around for a few weeks or months, resettled down, typically root end down because that end is heavier, and trees broken off. 27 consecutive, it's not 27 consecutive forests grew there. This was all shuffled up in a flood. I can shake this thing up and make 20 or 30 layers in a few minutes. You guys just don't get it. And I wish I could help you get it, but I don't know. Maybe you don't want to get it for some reason. 30-foot petrified tree in Kettle Coal Mine in Cookeville, Tennessee. The top and bottom are in different seams of coal. When they date these seams of coal, they're thousands of years different in age. Oh, really? So that tree survived for thousands of years through those rock layers. It's just not common sense. I wish you could see it. Up at Joggins, Nova Scotia, there are hundreds of polystrata fossils, trees that are standing up, running through all the layers. The geologic column that you depend on so dearly that's your worldview based on that, it does not exist anywhere. Talk to Ian Juby, ianjuby.org. He lives there. Tell you all about the petrified trees standing up, running through these layers. So my stance is very clear. There is no such thing as a geologic column or a stratigraphic column. All the layers formed in 1 year. With tidal pumping, the moon pulling the water up and down, it's also pulling it in and out. It would make thousands of layers in 1 year. Noah was in the ark for over a year. He was in there for 7 months until the Bible says the ark rested in the 7th month. He didn't get out for 5 more months because it's still muddy out there and there's nothing to eat. So during those last 5 months, the ground's drying out and stuff is growing again. During those first 7 months, though, Noah saw 880 tidal changes. He probably wouldn't see it or feel it. He's in a boat riding on top, but the stuff underneath is feeling it. Water going up and down is sucking in and out, making all these layers very, very rapidly. So I'm sorry, you are simply mistaken. There is no such thing as a geologic column. It does not exist anywhere. It's your Bible. I know you need to get a new Bible, okay? That one is dumb. This one's in our museum here, or was. I don't know if it still is or not. Petrified piece of wood running through 12 different layers of slate. It's just not common sense. This fish was found with the nose stuck in rock that's 1,000,000 years older than the rest of the head is stuck in. He balanced on his nose for 1,000,000 years? I doubt that. So polystrate fossils and trees are a clear indication the layers formed quickly. The dead animals that are found in there fossilized would be sorted a little bit based upon habitat or mobility or density or intelligence. Nothing to do with evolution. The fact that one animal's down here does not mean it's turning into something else. No animal turns into anything else. Cows make baby cows every time. There are no exceptions. So I'm sorry, you're simply mistaken. I'll stand by my guns. There is no such thing as a geologic column. Doesn't exist anywhere in the world. And evolution is the biggest lie in the world. Okay, so the grieving wife, we can tell you, honey, your husband died. We can tell you he died from a gunshot wound maybe, and how long ago he died. I can't tell you if he's having kids that are less human or more human or becoming spacemen. You cannot tell from a fossil that it had any children that lived. And you certainly cannot tell from any fossil in the world that it had children that were different than itself. You find a horse fossil. I bet if it had babies at all, they were baby horses. I'd bet $5 on that. That's all I got. I bet every animal in the world today only produces after their kind. But you guys imagine, SpongeBob style, you imagine if we give it enough time, they could turn to something else. It just isn't science. That's all. You can believe it if you want, and you do. But it's not science. I wish you'd stop teaching that to the kids in public school, because I think it's a dumb, dumb, dumb religion. So what else did I cover? Okay, the Kaibab Plateau on your chart, you showed the Kaibab at 270 million years old, and the Blue Angel Formation at 515 million. So where was the material that makes up the Kaibab for 245 million years? Where was it? Was it in outer space? Do you have a better answer? You guys never answer that simple question. How can the layers be different ages? They cannot be. Every speck of dirt on the planet's the same age. Whether it's 6,000 or 6 trillion, they're all the same age. Shuffling them around like the cards does not change the age of them. You guys just don't get it. But this geologic column made up in 1830 by Charles Lyell, who hated the Bible, has become your Bible, and you like it because it lets you get freedom from God. That's the real reason. We'll get into that some other time. Go ahead, brother.
Okay, brother, thank you so much for that 13-minute opening statement. It looks like David just accidentally dropped within the last 30 seconds, and just in time, David, you made your way back. So that's good. And that concludes, gentlemen, the opening statements, 13 minutes. To the audience, I am all caught up on questions, so thank you so much for the on-topic questions. David, we're now moving into the 8-minute uninterrupted rebuttal. Lots of excellent points and questions on the table to address and discuss. So, David, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Wow. Kent totally went off in another direction. So I guess we're not talking about transitional fossils anymore. You keep harping and harping on this. Where did the top layer come from? All of those layers, each one of those layers has to come from erosion somewhere else. You erode off sandstone or clay or gravel, and then that clay or gravel is moved into the other place. Like I tell you, you can't have sedimentation unless you have sediments. So those sediments came from somewhere else. Then they're added to that Grand Canyon. But they talk about them.
David, I'm just going to pause your timer real quick. Were you looking to share your screen?
Not right at the moment. I will.
Okay.
But
I just wanted to make sure if you had the intention of visuals, I wanted to make sure that you knew that no visuals are up currently. And so no worries. If you need to share screen. Oh, okay, here we go.
Sorry about that. It's
No worries. Take your time.
I can tell you that the top layer was added after the layer below it, just like in that road construction. The second layer was added after the layer below it. So as far as layers go, those layers on the top are younger than the one below it, because that one below it has to be there, or the one above it can't be added. You can't do that. Just like in the road construction, you can't add a layer in the middle. You have to add the layer at the top. So each time it's going up. Now, you talk about that video. I watched every minute of that video. And of course, you didn't realize it because you only want to see the creation part. The thing is that he threw a ton of sediments into a flume, into a pipe or something, and then it went down to the bottom, and he could then take a little slice, and what did he find? He found little tiny layers, like 1 or 2 millimeters thick. Those layers, yes, those layers were all created at the same moment, but when you're talking about the that shale layer that's 340 feet thick, that cannot be added like that. Okay? And when you see that layers in that flume that guy used, you constantly hear him saying in that video, you hear him say, now the layers that are on top are younger than the ones below it. So you have to watch how the layers are younger when they're higher up and older when they're further down. He said that in that same video. And he also talked about the delta. So he's talking about river deposits going down a river and being deposited in a delta, like the Mississippi Delta, where deposits are made and those rocks fall off the end of that delta. But that has nothing to do with the Grand Canyon. You didn't, I noticed that you didn't bother to try to address that some of those layers were made from sandstone, no water. They're arid, dry sand that then becomes layers in the Grand Canyon. Those layers that are limestone, if the flood comes through there, it's going to dissolve anything that's limestone, because limestone is soluble in water, and it will not precipitate unless it has standing water giving it enough time to precipitate. You didn't address that either. You seem to think that just because you want to believe that somehow the flood threw a bunch of sediment in there and all of a sudden it lays down nicely in layers with a big hole in the middle. That's not the way it works. That's not the geologic processes. You're making up things that don't belong. And that's what I want to say about that. Now, as far as some of the other points you made, those were points completely off topic from this, what this discussion was supposed to be. I sent you an outline. Did you not look at it? The specific things that I wanted to be discussed, you seem to not want to discuss. Obviously, you can ignore my stuff, bring out your same 5 points that you always bring out in 300 debates. You always say dogs produce dogs,
1
cows
minute.
produce cows. I'm through.
Oh, you want to concede the minute there, David?
Yeah, sure. Put
Okay.
it in the.
We'll put it into the discussion. Ket, we're going to hand it over to you now. Whenever you're ready, you've got 8 minutes. The floor is yours.
Well, I don't want to. I don't want to disappoint David. So, David, dogs produce dogs. Every time. There are no exceptions. Plants and animals will always bring forth after their kind. And I'm not against science. I love science. But evolution is not part of it. There's no science behind evolution at all. Nobody ever sees any animal produce a different kind of offspring. Let me get to the right spot here. There are 339 breeds of dogs. God said they would bring forth after their kind, after their kind, after his kind. He said it 24 times in the first 7 chapters. That's all any scientist, any animal breeder in the world, any farmer has ever seen. Nobody has ever seen a cow produce a non-cow or a dog produce a non-dog. We are descended from wolves. Oh, and our owner from a monkey. Oh, how embarrassing. Dogs always make baby dogs, but you believe an amoeba or a protozoa turned to a biology teacher. This isn't science. Most of the varieties of dogs that have been produced by dog breeders in the last, couple hundred years or a couple thousand years would not survive in the wild. How long would the Chihuahuas last out there? 20 minutes? The mice would eat them. I mean, come on. And they're always a dog, and there's a limit. Small dogs, little, big dogs. And I've said it many times. I'll say it again. Dogs, wolves, coyotes might have had a common ancestor, but that doesn't prove they're related to a banana. And you guys with your family tree want the dogs related to a banana. You really do. Now, we're supposed to be talking about transitional fossils. Most of your first presentation was about the layers of the earth. So I answered that one. You didn't bring up transitional fossils. I'd still like you to show me a transitional fossil. There aren't any. No fossil could count as being transitional. How could you prove it had any children at all? How could you prove it had children that lived? How could you prove it had children that were different than itself? No animal today does this. No animal today produces anything other than its same kind. Why should we believe a fossil in the dirt can do something that no animal today can do? And the answer they usually give is, well, it happens so slowly we can't see it. Then it's not science. Science, what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. Transitional fossils help bridge gaps in the tree of life. According to modern evolutionary theory, all populations of organisms are in transition. Have we seen this? We see bacteria get born, grow up, get married, and have babies in 8 hours. You can see 3 generations in one day. So one scientist in his lifetime could watch tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of generations of bacteria. But they never changed anything but a bacteria. This textbook says hundreds, probably thousands of transitional fossils have been found by researchers. That is absolute baloney. Not one transitional fossil has been found. Their intermediate fossils represents the transition of vertebrate life to water on land. Tiktaalik, really. If you find Tiktaalik fossils, I would be willing to bet $5 it had Tiktaalik babies. You can't prove it changed to something else. The putting things in order is arranging them in some order you want it's not science. This is fictition. This is making it up. Fictitious. Okay. Tiktaalik does not count. You could not prove it had any kids, and you couldn't prove it had kids that were different. No animal today can do this. Why could that one do it? There are some lobe-finned fish alive today. I'm just pointing out there is no geologic column. There are no transitional fossils. I'm sorry, it just doesn't happen. Cows can jump. I agree. I got a video of a cow jumping over a 6-foot fence. Yay. But I bet there's a limit. I accept the fact cows can jump. That's overwhelming. Experiments can be performed to prove this fact. There's a video of the bull. You can watch it. World's highest cow jump. Google that one. Jumped over 2 6-foot fences. I accept the fact that they can jump. Therefore, given enough time, the cow could jump over the moon. That's your logic. We see little variations within the kind. There are 400 kinds of cows now. Therefore, cows are related to termites. That's the logic you guys have. No, I bet there's a limit. The cow's never going to jump over the moon. There's a limit, okay? Have they reached the limit at 6 foot? I don't know. But there is a limit. Somebody might get 6'1" next year. I don't know. But there are 400 breeds of cows, and they might have had a common ancestor called a cow. That's it. It doesn't go any farther than that. They can specially breed cows to try to get more meat or more milk, get dairy cattle, beef cattle, whatever. But every time they get away from the norm, they get one desirable trait that they want: more milk, more beef, better heat resistance, and they're less likely to survive in the wild. Now you got to babysit them. You got to put them in a corral, and you got to keep the coyote. They can't fight the coyote off anymore. Their udders dragging the ground because they give 100 pounds of milk a day. So the 4 processes of evolution, okay, there are 200, this guy says 250. Now they say there's 400 breeds of cows. I would agree. They're still a cow. But you guys want to put them on a chart and say the cows came from an amoeba, along with everything. So, David, do you think, a simple question, do you think you are related to a butterfly? On the chart, it shows the butterflies and humans having a common ancestor. Would you agree with that? Are you related to a butterfly? I think you'd have to say yes. There are 6 kinds of corn. They might have had a common ancestor called corn. There are 200 varieties of wheat. Might have had a common ancestor called wheat. 4,000 varieties of potatoes. Probably had a common ancestor called a potato. It could be the leopard and the lion have a common ancestor. They're cats and they can't interbreed. So can the tiger and the lion. They get ligers and tigons. They might be the same kind, but that doesn't prove they're the same kind as a cow or a butterfly or a ladybug. You guys want to put them all on the chart and claim they're related. This isn't science. Evolution is a religion. It's one of the dumbest religions in the world. Now, if you choose to believe it, fine. Believe what you want. But just so you don't get disappointed, I'll tell you very carefully, dogs produce dogs every time. By the way, we got some puppies here we'd like to give away. Please come. Anybody want a puppy? Please come get them, okay? We got what? One dog had 7, the other one had bunch. 12, yeah, whatever it is. So they selectively bred dogs for a long time. They say worked hard to get a dog that was smaller and loved to do nothing all day. Wants to sit in the owner's lap all day. Yep. They said, we want a dog with long hair. Oh, the hair's too long. So they get a dog that's short, does nothing all day and night. I did it. The dog is also very funny, stupid and ugly and makes funny noises all night. And the tongue hangs out the mouth and on the side and it drools. My wife's pug. They created the dog that's useless. How long would that last in the woods? You guys, I wish you could get it, David. You are following one of the dumbest religions in history. Evolution didn't happen. There's no evidence for it at all. We never see a dog produce a non-dog. What you believe is that everything came from a common ancestor. You have been fooled. I'm sorry. You have just been lied to. Go ahead.
Okay, Ken, thank you so much for that 8-minute rebuttal. Gentlemen, that concludes the openings, about 13 minutes, and also the rebuttals between 7 and 8 minutes. So now we're going to move into more of a free-flowing discussion. David, before you begin, I do have your document pulled up. And so as moderator, what I'll do during the discussion portion is just make sure we're not spending too much time on a single point or topic. I'll make sure that we get through the several that you have provided us for the debate. So with that, Kent just ended his rebuttal. So David, let's allow you to pick the first topic and point you'd like to discuss. Go ahead.
Let me just say before you start my timer, I spent the last month researching this 6 to 8 hours a day, creating slides, trying to come up with a horse transitional fossils because that's what you want to talk about. And now Kent has spent 8 minutes using exactly the same slides with exactly the same wording that he did in my first debate with him. I just don't understand that.
Actually, David, if I could jump in real quick.
If
I could jump in real quick, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I remember, your 13-minute opening statement, you basically only got through the geologic column for the most part. Is that right?
That's right. I used up that time
for
that purpose, and I stopped when you told me to stop.
And so Kent responded to your geologic argument, geologic column arguments. We have yet to now touch on the transitional fossils, the specifics that you provided, because you have not yet used your time to discuss those. And so what we're going to do is now start the discussion. Either we can continue on the geologic column, which is how you spent your 13 minutes. Basically, you spent your 13 minutes on that specific point. If you'd now like to discuss a specific transitional fossil, we can do that as well, David. So we'll allow you to pick the first topic. Go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna talk about transitional fossils, in particular of the horse.
Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do, David, is I am going to change up the format a little bit. We're going to focus on one topic at a time. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to present your line of evidence. So it looks like you've got about 3 minutes to present a case for evolution through horse fossils in transitional forms. So we'll give you 3 minutes, and then we'll give Kent equal time to respond. So David, whenever you're ready, you got 3 minutes to argue from horse evolution.
Okay, so I'm sure Kent remembers this slide where Todd Wood from Creation, he was with Answers in Genesis originally, says that horse evolution is more like macroevolution. Here's a lineup of horses, and I'll make it quick. You guys won't get it, but oh, come on. These horses are increasing in size. The skull is increasing in size, but the teeth are progressing toward grassy eaters. The Hyracotherium was a browser, unlike what Kent said in his CSE 102, where he said that Hyracotherium was a carnivore and ate meat. That's not true. It was a browser. They're all browsers up until the last couple. You noticed in the skull that the diastema in those skulls is getting larger. That's the space between the front teeth and the molars where the bit is placed. The leg is progressing. You can see that the side toes are regressing. There at the end, I showed the back side of a horse, and he has what they call stem bones that are the remains of those 2 and 4 toes. Over here on the side, over here on the side, on the left-hand side, I show the skull of a hyrax. A hyrax is a little animal that's still living that is closely related to an elephant. It has nothing to do with horses, except that its name kind of sounds familiar. But a hyrax is not a Hyracotherium. The Hyracotherium is something that looks a little bit like
20 seconds.
Okay. The other thing I want to tell you is that all of these horse kinds could have very well been all of one kind that came off the ark. And you seem to don't want to believe that. This slide here shows that there are actually 15 different transitional fossils.
5 seconds.
And so just shows that there are a lot more than just the one or two that you know about. I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much. And the perfect spot to end it as we move into Archaeopteryx there. And so, David, I gave you an extra minute just to make sure you were able to conclude your points on horse evolution. And so we are going to give Kent now equal time to respond. Kent, 4 minutes, whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you so much. David, what you showed were pictures of different animals, artist conceptions actually, drawings. You do not know that any of those on that chart change to any of the rest of them. Putting them in a sequence like this is not science. Saying that it went from a four-toed small animal like a dog and turned into a horse, the number of ribs changed, the teeth changed, that you don't know that they're related at all. Could it be that the hyrax has always made baby hyrax? You don't know that they've changed to anything. The horse evolution has been disproven for 60 years. I'm surprised you're still using that. Biology textbook on my shelf here. Other examples, including the much repeated gradual evolution of the horse, have not held up under close examination. G.G. Simpson, who was a strong proponent of evolution before I was born, he said many examples commonly cited, like the horse evolution, can be readily shown to have been unintentionally falsified. G.G. Simpson said that in 1950. The early classical evolution of the tree of the horse was all wrong. Science Newsletter of 1951. Uniform continuous transformation of Hyracotherium to Equus, so dear to the hearts of generations of textbook writers, never happened in nature. G.G. Simpson. Horses did not evolve. Apologetics Press has a great... Now, I don't know Todd Wood. I don't know what he believes, but if he believes there's examples of macroevolution, he's wrong. I'll debate him too. If he believes the horse evolution is science, I'll debate him on that. No, it's not. I don't know who he is or what he does. Okay, I heard the name before, but I don't know anything about him. Okay. They put these horses, these creatures in order. Only the top couple are horses. A lot of animals today look similar, got 4 legs and a nose on the front and a tail on the back. That's not proof they're related, but the biology textbooks are still teaching this. Let's see. Even evolutionists have known for more than 60 years the scenario of the horse evolution is completely false. Many books are still using this incorrect information to try to teach the false theory of evolution. Let's discuss how we know the horse evolution is false. The animals shown in these pictures are fully formed animals. They're not turning into other kinds. The first animal, that is called Eohippus, does not show any signs of changing into any other animal. No animal today can do this. Only your drawings on paper can do it. There's no reason to claim it's the ancestor of a horse. There are no fossils of Eohippus transitioning or changing into anything. The same can be said of all the animals on that chart. They're not evolving into other kinds of animals. They're complete, totally, fully functional animals, fully formed and perfectly created. G.G. Simpson said, the uniform continuous transformation of Hyracotherium to Equus, so dear to the hearts of generations of textbook writers, never happened in nature. If it did not happen in nature, that means the only place it happened is in the imagination of the textbook writers. Bingo. When we look at the evidence, we discover horses did not evolve. They were created by an intelligent designer. Many years ago, God said to Job, who gave the horse its strength? God created the horse, and they do just fine. Darwin said, if my theory be true, numberless intermediate changes, gradual changes, must have assuredly existed. I agree. In the years after Darwin, his advocates hoped to find these transitions, but they haven't been found. And fear fantasy has crept into textbooks. I only got 30 seconds. There are no missing links. The whole chain is missing. There is no chain. Absence of fossil evidence is a nagging problem for evolution, Stephen Gould at Harvard University said. Yeah, there's no evidence. If you found an animal that looked like it was halfway between a dog and a horse, and you found the fossils, that doesn't prove it's changing from a dog to a horse. It proves you found a dead animal in the ground. That's all it proves. No animal today is changing into anything else. David, you have a silly religion. I wish you'd give it up. Your turn.
Thank you very much. Kent, what we'll do, David, is we will give you, before we move on to another topic, this topic of horse evolution is obviously important. Many points have been advanced and put on the table. So, David, we'll give you 2 minutes. We'll have to be a little more strict this time as we move along in this debate. We'll give you 2 minutes to respond to Kent's response. Go ahead, David.
So, once again, you're saying there's no transitional fossils. They were all created exactly the way they're supposed to be. And yet, you are the one that says only certain kinds got on the ark. And when they got off the ark, it was 2 of every kind that got off the ark. So my question to you is, why aren't these horse fossils part of a kind that then transitioned into the modern horse we see today? Why is it that dogs can go from a little Chihuahua size to a Great Dane size, but horses cannot do that? That's not allowed.
David, did you want to give Kent the opportunity to answer that now, or did you want to finish your...
Let me have just one more sentence and then I'll be through.
Go ahead.
I asked you in my last debate, you said that the kind is at the family level of taxonomy. So my question is, how did a bison get born if cows that came off the ark only produce cows and nothing else? They only produce cows. So somehow either that bison was on the ark as was every other horse, every other animal. We're going back to what is it,
That's
8
2 minutes,
million?
David.
Okay. But I'm asking, where did that bison come from?
Go ahead, Kent. I think there's 2 questions there, the bison and then the original horse question.
I much prefer one question at a time. I think farmers have been able to selectively breed horses and get miniature horses. We have 2 of them here at our science center. Come see them. I don't think you can ride them, but you can pet them and feed them stuff, okay? Well, there are giant horses like the Clydesdale. Through selective breeding over centuries, farmers have gotten huge horses and little horses. Always a horse, nothing else. Noah might have had bison on the ark. I know that for years before we killed most of them out west, bison always made baby bison. So maybe Noah, maybe they're not. You think a bison's related to a horse? Bisons have horns. Horses don't have anything similar to that. There's no similarity. I think now, is a bison part of the cow family? I don't know. And I don't think I've ever said that the species is the same, or that the kind is the same as family. I would say very carefully, in some cases, it might be at the family level or genus level or species level. I don't think the animals care how we classify them. They know what their kind is. We got a bunch of animals here at our farm. If we turn them all loose together, the cows look for other cows to mate with. They're not the least bit interested in the horse or the giraffe or the tree or the grass. They want a cow. They know what the same kind is. Turn them loose. If you can't figure it out, they'll show you. Dogs always seek out other dogs to mate with, nothing else. Cats seek out cats. There are no exceptions. You guys imagine that these things are related. It's just sad that you were taught that. It's sadder that you swallowed it, and it's really sad that you won't puke it up now. It's not science. Maybe Noah had bison on the ark. When I get to heaven, I'm going to ask him. Hope you're there. I can tell you then. Or if you're not there, I'll try to relay the message to you wherever you are at the time. But Noah had cows on the ark. Farmers have selectively bred 400 species of or varieties of cows. It's farmers doing this. In the wild, the cows there'd be slight variations, not much. Natural selection might select the ones with thicker fur to survive in cold climate. And natural selection works. Artificial selection works really good. Every farmer in the world does that. But they'll tell you they've been able to develop 4,000 breeds of varieties of potatoes, and they're still potato. Do you think they'll ever turn the potato into a bison or a horse? Your charts show the horse and the bison and the potato are related. This is pure propaganda. This isn't science. These family trees are baloney. Tell them I said so. They drew a bunch of pictures on paper and connected them with lines. So, what did I ask him? Are you related to a butterfly? Was that it? Yeah. David, are you related to a butterfly? Go ahead.
No, I'm not related to a butterfly. That's a loaded question. You ask that every time just so that you can make fun of somebody for the next series of months. Just like you always say, Professor Dave is related to a strawberry. I'm not going to agree to any of those because you're not asking me something legitimate. You're trying to be tricky. What I'm asking you is a bison part of the family of cattle? And when those two cattle got off the ark, somehow they had to have made a bison. You won't admit it, but you did say, and I can show you the video if you like, you did say that kind was at the family level. So what I'm asking you now is that one of those family must have come from two cows at some point. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any bison. That's all I have.
I have never said bison came from cows. I do not know if bison are related to cows or not. I don't think they care how we classify them, but I bet $5 if we would put a bunch of bison and a bunch of cows and a bunch of hamsters out in the field together, the bison would seek out the bison, not the hamsters and the cows. And the cows would seek out the cows. They know what the same kind is. You can't seem to be able to figure it out, but they know. Noah might have had bison on the ark and cows. I don't know. I've never, and you cannot show me the video where I said they are family. I said in some cases it might be equivalent to our classification of family. Carolus Linnaeus made up our classification system: kingdom, order, kingdom, family, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. I don't think the animals care how we classify them. They know what their kind is. Let them loose; they'll show you. So I never said bison came from the cow. They might be considered in the cattle kind, but that's man putting our classification system on them. We say, oh, they got two hooves, they got horns, they got hair. Oh, we'll put them in the cattle family. Maybe they are. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not interested. But bison, all we've ever seen in recorded human history is bison make baby bison. Nobody's ever seen anything different than that. You can believe anything you wish to believe, but I've never said bison came from cows. Don't put those words in my mouth. You believe bison came from an amoeba, don't you, David?
No, I don't. You seem to want to stand now on there's no such thing as kind. And so all those verses that you talk about in Genesis 1 and in Genesis 5, where it says, reproduce after your kind, and he took two of every kind on the ark. Back maybe a year ago, everyone was asking you, what is a kind? And you have a video where you say kind is probably at the family level. So at some point, two kind of the same kind got off the ark and created a bison. And that's what I'm asking. You don't seem to want to answer that. And so you keep changing the subject.
I think you're the one changing the subject, David. You said you wanted to talk about the geologic column. You wanted to talk about the horse evolution. And what was the other one, David, he sent in? Whale evolution. None of those are bison. A whale is different than a bison, Dave. So let's talk about bison next time. I'll do some research and find out. Is the chromosome number the same? Can they interbreed? I doubt it. But it's not the point. They figure out, they tell you what their kind is. They look for their kind. I bet when you got interested in women and started looking for a wife, you probably didn't even look at the hamsters or the cows or the birds. You started looking for the human. Hope so. That's the way it is in nature. I've never said, and it's not my job to define the word kind. I'm not asking my theory to be taught in the schools at taxpayer expense.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not. You have 27 different definitions of species. What's a species exactly?
There is one definition for species, and there are certain kinds, certain species that it's hard to tell the difference, because when you're talking about bacteria or viruses, it's pretty hard to look at their teeth to tell if their teeth are different. So there are not 27 different definitions for species.
I can show them to you. I got them on screen here if you want to see them.
I can't see your screen, so
okay.
I guess you'll have to mail them to me. But
I can put a full screen if you'd like.
Definition of species.
I can't see the YouTube screen at all right now. So
okay.
Sorry.
This one says a species is a type, a kind, a sort. They use the word kind. Wow. A kindergartner can tell you if animals are the same kind. Put a banana and a dog and a coyote together, and they'll say the banana is not the same kind. A kindergartner can tell you. But you said you had evidence for evolution from transitional fossils from the whale and from the horse. I point out none of what you gave for the horse is evidence for evolution. You don't know the hyrax produced anything other than a hyrax. You can put them in a series on a piece of paper and draw lines between them. You don't know that line is correct. All we've ever seen is hyrax produce baby hyrax. That's all any farmer's ever seen in the history of the world. Evolution is your imagination. You and SpongeBob. Yeah, look, just imagine if you give it enough time.
I tried my best to explain to you that a hyrax is not a Hyracotherium. A hyrax is a totally separate animal.
Understand.
Okay.
So the Hyracotherium only had baby Hyracotherium. How could you prove the Hyracotherium had anything other than a baby Hyracotherium? Why would you think that?
Because we found fossils. If there was only one Hyracotherium or Hyracotherium, there would be no fossils, because fossilization is very difficult. It doesn't happen every day, as you complain about all the time. And so if a Hyracotherium or a Pliohippus or whatever had no babies, then it would have had no fossils.
I agree. I think they had lots of babies, and I think they were all Hyracotherium, all of them. Probably had millions of Hyracotherium, and a bunch of them drowned in the flood. The flood is the ideal thing to make all the fossils in the world in 1 year. Nobody's proven fossils forming anywhere in the world today by any at all. How many animals died in the last 3 days? We've got 12 dead deer between here and the town 18 miles away. None of them are going to turn to fossils. None. Fossils don't form unless they're buried in mud, exactly like the flood would do. I say nearly all the fossils in the world formed in 1 year in Noah's flood. And Hyracotherium probably had a lot of babies.
We could go into another 3 or 4 hour debate about that, but
would you like to move to the next specific topic on transitional forms, David? I can put your
there's
screen
no
up again.
point because Mr. Kent doesn't believe anything that anybody else says except what comes out of his mouth. So I have nothing else to add. By the way, it wasn't whales, it was birds.
Did
Okay.
you want to cover the birds topic as a final topic? David, I do see your slides up, and so we could certainly look into that if you'd like to.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, Kent, if you'd like a response, basically to what David said there.
Scientists have now classified 72 species of herons, okay? They might have had a common ancestor called a heron. That does not prove herons are related to elephants. But we show charts with the family trees to the kids with the herons on the chart and the elephants, and you trace the lines down, they go back to a common ancestor. I think this is propaganda. I think it's lying. I think it's evil. I think the herons always bring forth after their kind. They're still a heron. Let's see, definition of species. There are 27 different definitions of species. You can look them up on the internet. Nobody knows exactly what a species is for sure. A dog and a wolf are different species, but they can interbreed. Strange. Exactly where is the border for different species? I think, but see, I'm not demanding that my theory be taught. I think it should be, but I'm not making all the taxpayers pay for my religion to be taught. You want all the taxpayers to pay for your religion of evolution to be taught. I resent that. I'm going to fight that till I die. And after I die, my videos are going to keep fighting it.
Yeah, after you die, people will look at, say, Heracitherium was a carnivore. What I want to say is that everything that you teach on your videos is wrong.
Well, David, I'm just going to jump in here because I'd really like us to just focus on the evidence rather than assertions. And so I do have your slide up. And in order to make this debate as comprehensive as possible, we have gone through the geologic column. We've gone through horse evolution. And I'm looking at your PDF document here. And your last and final point that you wanted to discuss was bird transitional fossils. And there are some people in the chat saying that they'd like to hear that argument presented. So why don't you take a couple minutes here, David, and that way we can ensure that we've touched on all the points that you have sent in. David, go ahead.
Okay. Archaeopteryx has been long said that it was a transition between reptiles and birds. That's because it shows evidence of being a reptile. It has teeth, it has a long bony tail, it has all those things. Then it also has feathers, and it has so it has examples that it flew. So you have Archaeopteryx. I'm sure you've heard of Berriman. If you haven't, you guys can look it up. They did a recent Berriman study using statistics, and they use clustering analysis. And what they found was that Archaeopteryx was in the same Berriman as Velociraptor. And so they said, oh, that can't be right, because Velociraptor would have been created on day 5 or day 6, and birds were created on day 5. So they did some more study, and they got the same, he calls it an error. So to correct this, they went back to the data and changed the data, did some stuff to the data, and finally they got Velociraptor in a different baraman than Archaeopteryx. So, I'm thinking that if you actually have to edit your data, then you did it wrong. The early ancestors of modern birds had scales. You can think about Velociraptor again. They had scales. Nowadays, some of them might have had feathers. A lot of paleontologists believe that they had feathers. In this one article at the top, it says that the researchers did a DNA change and were able to get alligator scales to change into feathers. And they have a paper.
20 seconds.
Scientists say that they've found a well-preserved fossilized heart inside a dinosaur, which had 4 chambers. So you can rule that 3-chamber thing out. The fossil of a carnivorous dinosaur called Atopus shows that its bones included spaces for air, storing air. This is just like birds.
5 seconds.
Here are some samples of feet. You can see this is the foot of a cassowary. Looks awful lot like that Velociraptor, and he's about as dangerous. And that's really all I had.
Okay, perfect. We got through those slides and arguments. I appreciate it, David. Kent, we'll give you equal time to respond. Go ahead.
How much time was that? I wouldn't keep it.
It was about 4 minutes, so you can take up to 4 minutes if you'd like.
Well, thank you, David. I appreciate it. I'd like to point out that no bird in the world today produces anything other than baby birds. No reptiles produce anything other than baby reptiles that look just like themselves. And it's absolutely completely stupid to believe dinosaurs turned into birds. I mean, like real capital S stupid. Tell all of them I said so. Okay. Dinosaur bird link smashed in fossil flap, USA Today, 23 years ago. Okay. Let's see. Archaeoraptor, the unofficial name of the fossil, is actually 2 animals pieced together, either as an honest mistake made by its discoverers in China or a breathtaking forgery. The composite on display at the National Pornographic Society of Washington until last week has a bird-like upper torso, the tail and feet of a small raptor. They glued 2 together. Wow. Remote Ling province in China, the unusual dinosaur fossil made a mysterious journey from the hands of Chinese smugglers to the polished halls of the National Pornographic Society in Washington. And like some curse from a mummy's tomb, Archaeoraptor, supposedly a bird-like creature with the tail of a meat-eating dinosaur, had brought to those who would possess it what would be remembered as modern paleontology's greatest embarrassment. They glued the part of a reptile tail onto a bird. Deliberate fake or honest mistake, it's the tail of a tail that has children believing in feathered dinosaurs that never existed. From Berkeley University, okay? One appears to have fooled another group of scientists as well as the editors of the British journal Nature. Storrs Olson, curator at the Birds Smithsonian Institute, Natural History, turned the spotlight on the whole mess. Those involved in the scientific gaffe agreed that Olson tried to warn officials at National Pornographic that the organization was headed for embarrassment if it endorsed the fossil. Both of the faked fossils were intended to support the theory that birds evolved from dinosaurs. Olson, who's an outspoken opponent of the theory, is taking advantage of this moment to renew an old debate. Let's see, museums, including the American Museum of Natural History in New York, promote exhibits of the dinosaur origin of birds. Olson and a group of academic ornithologists have been arguing, often bitterly, that for years that birds evolved independently of dinosaurs. He's still crazy about that one. No, birds don't evolve at all. No animal evolves. Every animal in the world, every farmer for all of history, all they've ever seen is animals produce what is obviously the same kind. Archaeoraptor, the feathered dinosaur from National Pornographic, doesn't fly. Steve Austin wrote an article. When was this one? Back into the year 2000, okay, 20 years ago. They've known this. Scientific American, they know. They draw a bunch of pictures and connect them with lines. It's all imagination. Stop, hit pause, and you can read these quotes for yourself. So they've known for a long time it isn't true. 23 years ago, it was proven to be baloney. I don't know why you're still teaching it, David. You're way behind. They found fiducia revealed one very important fact. The dino birds found in China, it's not all clear that the feathers found in fossils belong to feathered dinosaurs or bird feathers at all, albeit primitive ones. There's a considerable body of evidence that these fossil traces, known as dino fuzz, have nothing to do with bird feathers. Having studied most of the specimens said to sport proto-feathers, I and many others do not find any credible evidence that those structures represent proto-feathers. Many Chinese fossils have a strange halo of what has become known as dino fuzz. But although that material has been homologized with avian feathers, the arguments are far less than convincing. This dino fuzz appears in fossils that have absolutely nothing to do with birds. So you need to read up a little bit more. Dr. Fiducia said similar structures have been found in Aryan fossils in the past. So they don't know. It's not proof it's a feather. And if you wish to believe, and you do wish to believe, that dinosaurs turned into birds, that is a religious belief. It is not science. I've got tons of material just on this topic, but I'm out of time. So I'm sorry. There is no evidence at all for any animal ever producing offspring other than their same kind. And a fossil would not count in any honest court of law toward proving that goal. All you would know is it died. You couldn't prove it had any children that were different. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kent. As we come up to the 90-minute mark, David, are there any follow-up questions you wanted to ask Kent quickly about his response there, just to give you the opportunity?
All I have to say is that Kent has seemed to evolve himself away from kinds, like the kinds that were on the ark. So now it's every species of animal was on the ark, 8 million of them if it was. So I guess they have to make some more room on the ark. That's all I have.
For the record, I have never said every species was on the ark. Don't lie about me and say I said that. I'm not saying it now. Every kind of animal was on the ark. They have broken up into varieties that man has decided to classify as different species. Why do they put the dog, wolf, and coyote in different species when they can still interbreed? There were probably about 8,000 kinds of animals on the ark. They have now diversified into 8 million species, and I don't think the animals care how we classify them. There's roughly 8,000 kinds that had to be on the ark. It didn't bring fish, didn't bring insects, didn't have to anyway. So no, I've never said that. Don't accuse me of saying that. Noah's Ark was fine. All the animals fit on there. The Bible says at the end of time there will be scoffers who would be willingly ignorant of the creation and the flood and the coming judgment. David, you are willingly ignorant of God's creation. He made them bring forth after their kind. You are willingly ignorant of that flood. There were 8,000 kinds of animals. They got off and they've diversified now into big horses and little horses, hairy horses and short hair horses, long hair and short hair. They're still horse. There have been no evolution of any kind of animal at all. Every animal still today brings forth after their kind. Our dogs had puppies. They're going to grow up and be dogs, guarantee you. Go ahead.
Okay, gentlemen, if you feel appropriate at this point, we can now jump into some audience questions. David, I'm looking at the document of arguments that you sent in, and it looks like we've had lots of time to discuss the geologic column, the horse transitional series, and now the bird transitional series. And so it might be a good time to move into some audience questions. What do you think, David?
Oh, that's fine. Yes, please.
Okay, gentlemen, I appreciate a comprehensive debate. So here we go. We are going to jump into some audience questions. We've had an excellent audience with some plenty of side chat audience debates going on. Okay, so let's see where we can start here. Okay, we got a question here. I'll just start at the beginning. And so this is a question from Taylor K. It's a question for David. And she's asking, if the rock layers took millions of years to form, how do you explain the existence of polystratofossils running through multiple layers?
Those polystrata fossils, first of all, let me tell you that polystrata is a creationist term that no science person uses that term, polystrata. Okay? Trees are made out of very, whatever you would call it, robust or very thick cretin or whatever, the bark, the outside of the tree, it has its roots in the ground, and like you said, fossils only happen with rapid burial, so that there are rapid stratification deposits going on with that tree standing there. And once there's, 4 or 5 feet of strata and it's starting to harden and turn into rock, that tree is just going to stand there forever. When the stratification buries the tree will be part of those layers. That's all I can tell you. One thing I do know is that those trees that you talk about so fervently are always found near coal deposits. It has to do with very soft layers of coal, which is formed out of a long process of the plants being turned into coal. So that tree is there, but it's not a tree buried in granite. I can tell you that for sure. None of them are.
Okay, David, thank you very much for your response. Kent, over to you for a response.
I think he proved my point. All the layers had to form quickly around that tree before it would rot. If you buried a tree, we bury them here once in a while, moving dirt around. If you bury a tree 3 or 4 feet deep, the top half is going to rot. It doesn't wait for the rest of the dirt to come around it. You may get a few feet of it fossilized by burying it that way, but the rest is going to rot and break off. It doesn't stand there waiting for more layers, especially for millions of years. Polystrata fossils are excellent evidence that all the layers formed in less than 1 year. Noah's flood is the ideal explanation for that. I'm not demanding that be taught as science. I can't prove it. I think it's a logical explanation. I think it's illogical to say the layers are different ages when you have trees standing up, running through all these layers, and you want to claim the layers are different ages. That is beyond illogical. There's other words for it, but I'll save them for later. Okay?
Okay, Kent, thank you very much. David, did you want a real quick response since it was your question?
It does take time. Stratification can happen rapidly. Hardening those into layers of rock takes time. All of that takes time. For some reason, you think God is afraid of time. And so it takes time.
Okay, thank you for the final word. And okay, so we got a question from one of your number one fans, Kent, creationist crybaby, is in the house. So he's got a
I got what he needs right here. If he starts crying, I'll give him some. Okay, go ahead.
Appreciate it, Kent. You're always thinking about your critics, brother.
Oh yeah, I want to help him. I want to help.
Amen. So, CC, there's some tissue paper for you, and then we've got a question for Kent. So, let's see, Kent, how do you explain, I guess, extensive volcanic layers throughout the geologic column if it was all laid down in a global flood?
Well, the flood lasted a year. We don't know that Noah was in the ark for a year. We don't know that every part of the world was covered with water for a year. And there were lots of volcanoes going off. The Bible says the fountains of the great deep broke open. I think there would be volcanoes by the tens of thousands going off at the same time as the flood. The purpose of the flood was to kill everybody not on the ark, and it did a great job at that. We have cracks all over the world today called fault lines, thousands of them, where parts of the earth are still moving, and most of the volcanoes are near those fault lines. When the fountains of the deep broke up, that is what caused the flood, water coming up, rain coming down, lots of things. We covered that in video number 6. So I think that the volcanic layers would logically be intermixed in the layers of sediment that are being deposited all simultaneously. There could be some parts of the world only underwater for a few weeks. Noah's in the ark for a year. Parts might have been only under for a few weeks. And it could float up and down. The crust was flexing up and down, sometimes above water. Volcano pouring lava out, sinking back down, more layers being deposited. We'll have to wait and see the video when we get to heaven on that. But there's no reason to doubt the biblical account because of these layers of lava intermixed with the layers of sandstone, shale, etc. I think the flood did all of that in 1 year.
Okay, I appreciate the response there, Kent. David, go ahead if you had a response as well.
Some of these things are just so ridiculous that it's hard to come up with a response. Volcanoes are hot, in case you didn't know.
I didn't know.
Extremely hot, 2,000 to 3,000 degrees hot. And if those volcanoes spread lava out over rock layers that are quartz, sandstone, shale, those are going to become metamorphized into something else. And so you cannot say that, oh, well, all this lava came out, all these layers came out in between there. They just knew how to go in between the rock layers. It's not going to happen. That wasn't it.
Okay, thank you, David. Kent, question was for you if you'd like a final word there.
Well, the Pope has spoken. That wasn't it, so we got to believe it. I think we'll see the video of the flood. The fountains of the deep broke open. I think it was chaos in the world. I don't know if you know this, David. I understand volcanoes are hot. Volcanoes erupt underwater sometimes. I don't know if you know that or not. There's quite a few volcanoes. Actually, most volcanoes are erupting underwater. And the lava flows out, hardens quickly, and it does metamorphosize some of the rock. I understand. And we find that in the so-called geologic column, don't we? Metamorphic rock, as well as sedimentary rock, as well as igneous rock, all mixed together in these layers. There is no such thing as a geologic column. It doesn't exist anywhere. All those layers formed in 1 year. I'll stand by that. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Kent. And I learned a couple things in that question, that volcanoes are hot. So I do appreciate it, gentlemen. And next question here comes in from Angelo Lagruta. $10 super chat. Thank you so much for the support. And by the looks of it, I think it's a question for you, David, but we will work through it together. And so Angelo is asking, how did all life produce successfully at the beginning of time? How did they manage to successfully change with more success than failure to preserve life, since mutations are inherently recessive? David, go ahead.
What I would say is that the changes that are made in an animal or a plant or whatever are due to environmental pressure. So if there's pressure going on, then that environmental pressure is what pushes the population to be successful. And because it's a whole population, not one individual, that gives it much more opportunity for these minor changes to be successful. I think that answered it.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Kent, anything you'd like to add?
What he shared was just pure imagination. It wasn't science. We do observe mutations happening occasionally. They're harmful, fatal, or neutral. We don't ever observe a mutation adding information. We see it changing existing information. We have some ducks here in our herd of stupid ducks that I feed every day, that they have mutation. The skull bones didn't grow together right, and they got a crop of feathers growing up funny on the side of their head. It's not helpful. It's a useless. All mutations are harmful, fatal, or neutral. And if you had a good one, which nobody's ever proven, who would it marry? Don't you have to have two at the same time of the opposite sex, except in San Francisco? And they have to find each other and produce. Now they got to change the whole population. The idea that mutations drove evolution is real stupid. Okay, doesn't happen at all. No evidence of that at all. That's crazy. Mutations are harmful, fatal, or going backwards, like they said. Inherently recessive. Worse than that, regressive. They take you back. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kent. Appreciate it. David, you could have the final word. Question was for you.
As I said, the changes are caused by environmental pressure on the population. It's not pressure on one guy, and this one guy says, "Hey, I have hoods now. Any of you ladies have hoods?" It's the whole population that makes very small changes over time, and that's what causes this, and that's what causes them to be successful. Now, every once in a while, there may be a mutation come along. Some flamingo is born with his legs on backwards. Well, he's not going to live very long, and he won't certainly pass that mutation along to anybody else. But the very small changes that happen gradually can be very successful over time.
Okay, thank you, David. Next question is now for you, Kent. This comes in from Centurion 737. Appreciate it. And he says, SFT question for Dr. Kent. Can you explain why there is no erosion or vegetation between the layers if they are millions of years between each layer?
That's a question for David and the atheists and the evolutionists. There are no erosion marks between these layers. The layers are laid down rapidly. I bet if I flip this thing over, it'll form 20 layers, and there'll be no erosion marks between these layers either, because the layers are forming in quick succession. The layers that we see all over the world formed rapidly in Noah's flood, and the minor erosion marks when tidal changes would take place, because if the tide's pulling up and down, it's sucking water in and out at the same time to create the tidal bump or the tidal depression. So it's the sideways movement of the water that made most of the layers. So you would get a little bit of erosion possibly, or wiping off some layers. Plus, if the crust of the earth is still flexing, some of the layers might be tilted up, wiped off, and new layers deposited at weird angles, unconformities. They would find that for sure. The flood's the best explanation for that. So yes, there was no vegetation between the layers. That's because it was all deposited quickly. That proves my point. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Kent. David, anything you'd like to add to the question or points that Kent made?
What's interesting about what Kent said there, of course, In the Grand Canyon, that wasn't all laid down at one time, because some of those were laid down by desert sand dunes, and some of those limestones would have all dissolved if they were in this turbulence of water that came through. But I can tell you that almost every one of those layers shows erosion between the layers. Some of the terrestrial layers of sandstone have insect footprints. They have dragonfly wing impressions. And so, yes, there is erosion between the layers, so they can't happen all at once. And they're different. They're made of different things, so each layer is going to be something different. And how, the flood pours in a bunch of sediment, I don't know how it divides itself up and knows that all of these pink quartzite goes over here, and all of the blue clay slate goes over here. You don't explain that very well. So again, I think anyway, that's what I think. So there is erosion going on between layers.
Okay, thank you, David, for that response. Kent, question was for you. If you can have the last word or last response.
Well, I believe that's what I said. There could be some erosion in some of the layers because of the tidal changes and the tide going back and forth. It changes every 6 hours, 12 and a half minutes. So, yes, I think we'd get the tidal pumping causing the water going sideways back and forth. It could a little bit of erosion. As far as the sandstone, that's interesting. If the crust of the earth is broken up, and it is, and it's flexing up and down during this flood, you might have had some parts come up out of the water and be out of the water while the wind is blowing and deposit dry sand during the flood, and then submerge again and make more layers on top. It's very feasible for a worldwide flood to make sandstone layers without a problem. I don't know how you can't understand that. So, yes, I think the flood is the best story, the only logical answer for the layers that we see, polystrata fossils, and finding fossils at all. Noah's flood's the best answer. I believe that. Go ahead.
Okay, Kent, thank you very much. We're going to start winding it down now. Been a ton of fun, this debate, and lots of questions have come in, but we got to wrap it up at some point. So this one comes in from Echoing Erudite, and it is a question for you, David. It is related to one of the main topics for tonight, transitional fossils. And so he asks, for fossils that you consider transitional, can you demonstrate evolutionary progression without imagination and preconceived evolutionary ideas? David, the floor is yours.
I think in those diagrams that I had clearly show evolutionary progression when, Eohippus has 4 toes on the front foot, and each one of those toes has a little hoof on it. And then the next progression, 2 of those toes have gotten shorter, and the hoof has gotten bigger. And the next one, the hoof gotten quite a bit bigger. The 2 side toes have moved up, and until at the very end, you have 1 hoof, 1 toe, and the 2 side toes are the little bones in the back. So I think that clearly shows a progression from one to the other.
Thank you, David. Kent, go ahead. The floor is yours if you had anything to respond to.
There's no possible way you could know that any of those are connected. Somebody drew a line on a piece of paper and made a claim that one turned into the other. We don't see this happen ever. No animal today produces anything other than its kind. There are 4-toed animals today and 5-toed animals. Show me one of those slowly produce shorter toes and bigger hooves. Within that family, we should watch it happen. I don't know how old horses are when they have babies, figure 8 or 10 years maybe. So one person could see several generations, and we've observed for centuries horses having babies. You can go back thousands of years to the Romans and look at the pictures they left behind. Their horses look like horses. We don't ever see this happening. David, all you have is imagination. And somebody drew a line on paper and connected them. I could connect lines on paper between a horse and the moon. Yeah. You can draw lines on paper connecting anything. That's not science. What we see is horses produce baby horses, always. Cows produce baby cows, without exception. You imagine anything other than that. So I'm sorry, you do not have science on your side. You have imagination on your side. A vivid one. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kent. David, you get the last word? Yeah, go ahead.
What you're saying is that no animals changed from the creation until today. Every animal was the same, that it was created and got on the ark, got off the ark. They all stayed the same. There is no such thing as repeating after your kind, because after your kind just means the same animal. So that's quite a change from a year or so ago, and I'm glad to know that we're not changing anymore.
Okay, thank you, Dave. David, thank you. Okay, we've got the last question for tonight, and I'll remind the audience this will complete the David versus Kent debate trilogy. So it's been a ton of fun and lots of good moments. This is Pocket Locker 86, Dr. J. Bundy. Kent, this was your 300th debate interlocutor. This was a fun one, and so he says, nice shirt, Kent, and then he's got a question attached to it. How do you explain the fossil record of palm trees being dated back to 90 million years old?
I think the whole dating idea is based on the assumption that the geologic column is true. If you found a fossil and took it to any university and said, how old is this? The first question they would ask is, where did you find it? What difference does that make? Well, we need to know what layer it came from so we can get a bracket of approximately how old it is. They might date that same thing 10 times to get the number they want. Carbon dating, I cover very vividly on my video number 7 with lots of examples. I don't have that called up now. Carbon dating, potassium, argon, rubidium, strontium, lead-208, lead-206, all of those dating methods were developed in the last 70 years. And they all have wild speculation involved. You have to assume that you know the initial content of the object. You have to assume there's been no contamination. You have to assume the decay rates remain constant. In a court of law, in an honest court of law, none of the dating methods that would hold up under questioning. How do you know? You could probably carbon date. They've carbon dated living animals and found them to be millions of years old. So if they say they dated a palm tree 90 million years old, I don't believe it.
Kent, appreciate the answer there. David, the floor is yours.
As I showed you in my slides, it's not an arbitrary number that they come up with. They have sampled and they have analyzed thousands of samples to come up with the dates that they've come up with. If there is any kind of if it's not right, they're going to throw it out because it's not right. They're not going to say, oh, we need to keep this one because, it tells us 90 million and we don't want this one over here that said 4,000. I can guarantee you, Kent, that if you understood the science behind radiometric dating, that you would understand that they don't do it the way you're saying at all. And when you said they use carbon dating and show it's millions of years old, you should know by now that carbon dating is no good past about 50,000. So that shows how little you understand of the science behind radiometric dating.
Okay, thank you, David. And again, this was the last question, but it is a question for you, Kent. So we'll give you the final word if you'd like. Go ahead.
Sure. If you watch my video 7, I do understand carbon dating would only work for 50,000 years if it worked at all. Living mollusk shells were carbon dated 2,300 years old. They were still alive. Let's see. If a carbon date supports our theories, we put it in the main text. If it doesn't entirely contradict them, we put it in a footnote. If it's out of date, we just drop it. They pick the dates they want. That was 1970, so 20 years after it was invented. Not getting any better. Freshly killed seal, carbon dated 1,300 years old. They just killed it. Not getting any better. I go through video on video 7. I would encourage you to watch that. You can see them all on our YouTube channel, Kent Hovind Official, or on our website, drdino.com, DRDINO. Up in 81, they said this gross, wild dates are given. Living snail, dated 27,000 years old, still alive, Science Magazine. 11 human skeletons, all 11 dated at less than 5,000 radiocarbon years. What happened? 2 Colorado Creek mammoths buried side by side. One gave 22,000, one gave 16,000. They're right next to each other in 92. It doesn't work. It's based on wild assumptions, and it just, and all the other dating are the same thing, and worse with the bigger numbers. Potassium, argon, rubidium, strontium. They would not date something 90 million years old with carbon dating. If I said that, I don't think I did. If I did, I'm sorry. It would be something like rubidium, strontium, or lead-208, or it's one of those uranium dating. But they're all based on the same assumptions. How much was in it when it died? You don't know. Has the decay rate remained constant? There's lots of things that affect the decay rate. Has there been any contamination? You can't possibly know those things. I stand by my ground. The Bible says God made everything in 6 days, about 6,000 years ago. I believe that's scientifically accurate, and I believe that's what we're going to all have to face Judgment Day when God says, why didn't you believe my book? But that's up to you. Okay. Go ahead.
All right, Ken, thank you for that final response. That wraps up the question and answer period. A very thorough debate. Kent and David, I want to thank you both for the time that you've given to us for this debate. We've got several more of these evolution-related debates coming up. Next week, we've got Noah and Kent. So here's the advertisement for it. They'll be debating evolution on trial. And then we've got a debate here, Kent and Christian Dean. Christian Dean is from Denmark, I believe it is. And so this one will be an earlier debate, 4 in the afternoon. And so with that, gentlemen, Kent and David, thank you so much. Did you guys have some final words? David, why don't we start with you? Some final words, final thoughts. And thanks again for doing this.
All I can say is that Kent makes wild accusations. He says that these radiometric things are wild assumptions. You ought to know scientists are absolutely opposed to making anything wild. They make very clear assumptions. They're very carefully tested. And I don't know why, as a man of science, that you don't understand that. Obviously, you don't care to understand that. That's all.
Okay, David, thank you. Kent, over to you. Final words, final thoughts, and thanks again for doing this one, brother.
Well, thank you for having me. I'll take on all the atheists and evolutionists you can find anywhere in the world. Bring them on, okay? Now, if you can't marvel at the amazing designs God created, I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for evolutionists that look at just stunningly complex things in nature And they're required to think it happened by chance with no designer. You're not allowed to say, wow, praise God. Thank you for the amazing thumb you made. Thank you for everything you made, God. I don't have a problem. I'd settle with David at Pascal's wager. If there's a God, you got everything to lose by taking your position. I lose nothing. If there's no God, I've had a wonderful life. I got nothing to lose. I win either way. But you're in serious trouble if there's a God. I can look at nature and things God made and say, wow, God, you're smart. Thank you, God. You really believe all these things happen by chance. You think nobody made that? That came from a dot smaller than a proton, rapidly expanding, and formed itself by chance over billions of years. How can anybody with one functioning brain cell not see the design in nature and marvel at the beauty that God created? I don't know. I feel sorry for you evolutionists. I'll talk to any of you if you want to call me. 855-BIG-DINO, extension 3. I get calls all day. I shut it off when it's time to go to bed. But do you really believe nobody designed any of this? Beam me up, Scotty. There's no intelligent life down here. All right, thank you for having me. Let's do it again anytime.
Okay, Kent, thank you very much for the final words, final thoughts. I look forward to the next several debates coming up. So we're going to let these debaters get out of here for the night. They've earned some rest now. So David and Kent, we will allow you guys to leave. So have a good night and God bless. I am going to stick around just myself for a little bit, going over just some advertisements, some reminders, some announcements. And so the first month of 2023 has been busy. It has been packed with events on all sorts of topics. And what I've wanted to do was really mix it up with interviews, presentations, lectures, and of course, debates, but also a lot of impromptu discussions on various topics. And so this week, we've had a lot of fun. Please, if you have not yet seen it, I would say this is a much-watch program, probably the most comprehensive program you're going to find out there on the topic of Behemoth and Job 40. And so Paul Price, always a privilege to host him. He wrote an article on Creation Ministries website refuting liberal scholarship on Behemoth. And so this was a nearly 2-hour program dealing with all of the objections, criticisms, and basically just your viewpoints on Behemoth. So anybody in the audience who has not yet seen that was a show from yesterday. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure to share this around with your friends and family. Critical thinking is important. And that's why we host a lot of these shows live, because we want to give the skeptics and the non-skeptics, of course, the opportunity to send in their questions, send in their objections, feedback. And I think it's important to have ongoing dialogue such as this. Last week, we had Dr. Dan Biddle from Genesis Apologetics. He gave an amazing presentation, just a really fascinating presentation on dinosaurs, man, creation, and the flood. On YouTube now, in order to sort through all the videos, you'll have two main sections, either videos or live streams. I believe it's called, I'll just double check here, past live streams, perhaps. Just live. So make sure you click live. We do most of our shows live, and you'll find this show from last week. You'll find Behemoth from last night. We've also got a show tomorrow with Sal Jardina. He is a geologist. He's been here many times. I think about 10 times. He'll be giving part 2 of his new seminar series that he's doing here. So we're hosting it on Standing For Truth Ministries. We've been blessed with a lot of visiting experts, visiting scholars. And so we have ministries like the Creation Research Team on, John Mackay and Joseph Hubbard frequently. We have Michael J. Ord on frequently. We have Sal Jardina on frequently. So we bring in the professionals, we bring in the scientists. And tomorrow is going to be fun. So Sal Jardina will be giving a part 2 presentation of his new seminar series, All Creation Speaks is the title. If you love eschatology, we've hosted a ton of debates on eschatology. As a matter of fact, I released a book about 5 months ago. It's a blessing to see just how many people have benefited from it and picked it up. This is End Times Revealed, Dawn of the Antichrist. And so I've spent a lot of time on this topic of eschatology. I've done a lot of debates on it, both formal and informal. And so over the weekend, I engaged Chris Lucas. He holds to the historicist position. And so I sent him a copy of my book. He read through the relevant portions, Daniel, of course. And so we debated it. And then I also debated Jamie Russell. He holds to the Seventh-day Adventist historicism position. So we had a debate over the weekend as well. Again, if you love debates on end times theology, please do make sure to check those out. I let you guys know just a little bit before we wrap this up. We've got some more evolution debates coming up. So Christian Dean and Kent Hovind. Tonight, obviously, was David Emery and Kent Hovind. We've also got Noah from Fox Official coming up. Dr. Dino, this will be chapter 2. And then we've got Snake Was Right in a couple weeks as well, debating Kent. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. We're kicking off the year the right way. And, we want to have more of these evolution debates for our Evolution Debate Challenge series. I think we've done close to about 60 of them now, just in 2022 and now the first month of January. So if you're a debate addict and if you love evolution debates, we've done plenty that'll keep you busy. And Sandy C, more Grayson debates. Yes. So Grayson will be back here. He'll be having so I'm going to be starting a podcast series. And so it's more so going to be audio podcast debates. And this is a way, because I've been trying to figure out a way to add in my own debates in light of all the debates here that I'm moderating, the interviews and presentations, of course. And so I've personally had 100 of my own formal debates. But now what I'm going to do and able to be able to fit in more debates and discussions with those of differing views, this new podcast series, it's going to be fun. So it's going to be an audio podcast. I'll have a podcast overlay, and it's going to go by episodes, episode 1, 2, 3. It looks like I've basically got the first 3 episodes sorted out. It'll be myself and a different individual of the evolution persuasion for each episode. So far I'm working out details with Snake Was Right. We're going to be discussing genetic entropy. Grayson and I are going to be discussing Neanderthals. And then Dr. Zach Hancock and he's an evolutionary biologist. And obviously we disagree extensively on the topics related to origins, but I do appreciate his professional and cordial approach to these topics. And so we'll be doing an episode as well on ancestry. So I look forward to those. And yes, Grayson will be here. Grayson's also going to be here next month debating T-Rock. And he is going to be debating Nephilim Free as well. So that's going to be epic. And we're working on a round 3 with him and Kent. And so I've got events booked into March currently. So I'm basically working on filling up March. Again, this is a full-time ministry. You guys are the life and blood of this channel. You guys are keeping us going strong. And there's no way we'd be able to, I'd personally be able to put on these many shows if I weren't working full-time ministry here. And so God bless you. If you guys would like to see us continue working full-time, putting on these full-time shows, and also put out the next several books that we are working on. We've put out about 16 now, ministry-wide. And please consider, supporting us over Patreon. You can support us just through our shows here, and you can also support us through our website. So anyways, I want to go through a couple more of these shows coming up. Lots of debates on evolution, lots of debates on soteriology. And this one, I'm looking forward to this one. 2 true professionals here, Charles Jennings and Dan Chapa. They've both had many debates on soteriology. This is going to be epic. And so this is going to be the Warnings of Hebrews debate. And so what I do, I like to keep up on what debates are going on just in the world, I guess you could say, and also the debates that have taken place in the past. And I like to get debates on topics that are important, but you don't see debates on these topics happening. And so that goes for the Daniel 9 debates. We've done now a couple of those. A debate strictly on the warning passages of Hebrews, very important topic. So that's coming up as well. We've done many debates specifically on James 2. We're doing a lot of debates on dispensationalism. And so Pastor Matt First, Pastor Anthony Aquino, these guys are going to be here first week of next month. And so dispensationalism debate, the specific question, who are God's true chosen people? Controversial topic, important topic, one of my favorite topics to listen to in terms of discussions and debates. And, you know, we got to have more of these exchanges on these topics. And so Pastor Matt and Pastor Anthony know their stuff on this topic. This will be next week. First week of next month, basically. This is going to be a big one. Travis Thomas and Charles Jennings. These guys always come in swinging. And so they're going to be debating lordship salvation versus free grace theology. What is true biblical salvation? I'm pumped for this one. Caleb Percher and Nick Sayers. This is a King James only debate, but specifically we're debating a very specific topic. Is the KJV reading of 1 John 5:7? We all know the famous passage, for there are three that bear record in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost, and these three are one. And this is a controversial passage that's been discussed for years and years and years. And therefore, we are going to be having a formal debate on this topic coming up. Hurricane Havoc, good to see you, brother. CJ Cox, he is going to be here from the Synagogue YouTube channel. He's going to be here next month as well, debating Kelly Powers. And they are going to be debating the specific topic of total depravity. I'm pumped for that. We've got a lot for you guys. Again, we're now booking into March. Sandy C says it's Sandy C is talking about the Out of Africa debate that I did with Grayson. Yes, I've done several with Grayson on separate ancestry. Please check those out. They're comprehensive, technical. One on Out of Africa, one on separate ancestry, another one on universal or separate ancestry as well. Last thing I want to mention, last week we had Dr. Grady McMurtry here. He's well-rounded. Got a lot of knowledge on a lot of topics. We had a great audience for this. It was a 2-hour Q&A with Dr. Grady on age of the earth, creation, evolution, and basically all things related to the origins debate. And so if you haven't seen that show, please do check it out. Again, you can go to the channel. If you're not yet subscribed, please do hit that subscribe button. Share around to your friends and family. This information is important. And I'm doing my best to top 2022. 2022 was big. It was packed. I put out 3 books alone in 2022. And so, again, I got to thank you guys for all the support in order to make this happen. If you love the ancestry topic, creation, evolution, I highly recommend these 2 books. Special Creation, Dismantling Evolution, Confirming Independent Origins. This is about 300 pages. And it's the most up-to-date book you're going to find, trust me, on this topic of ancestry. I deal with your junk DNA arguments, mitochondrial Eve, Y chromosome Noah. I get into endogenous retroviruses and also your best arguments, scientific arguments for out of Middle East or out of Babel versus your out of Africa theory. I got a whole section on Neanderthals here, and I've also got a whole section on genetic entropy, and also refuting all of your critics' best arguments or objections to genetic entropy. Of course, the endogenous, one could say the prolific endogenous retrovirus handbook, the Evolutionists, one of their favorite books of 2022, I'm sure. This one is going to be one of your most comprehensive responses to endogenous retroviruses out there. And so you can find these books on the website. You can see them behind me. There's different variants for you as well. We got a variant cover of End Times Revealed. I've got a few different variants for the endogenous retrovirus handbook, but the Special Creation book especially, I highly recommend that one because it's 300 pages and it touches on a ton of topics related to the origins and ancestry debate. Hurricane Havoc says SFT books are a pleasure on paper. Hurricane Havoc, I appreciate always your feedback, my brother. Hope you enjoyed my impromptu discussion there the other night with Mark Reed over on the Praise I Am YouTube channel. We're chatting. What we're going to try and do is incorporate more open mics as well. If only we had more days in the week, more hours in the day. There's so much we want to do here. There's so much I want to do. And one of those things is more open mic conversations on evidence for evolution, eschatology. And so the longer that we can continue doing this full time, the more variety we can give you in terms of the discussions, the open mics, the debates, the books, so on and so forth. And so we can only do that with your support, guys. That's basically it. Tomorrow we're going to be back here 8 o'clock. So same time, we'll be here with Sal Jardina and Centurion. I appreciate it. One thing I want to remind people is I can see how many books are going out. And again, it's a blessing. Praise the Lord that, so many people are benefiting from our material and from our books, whether it's the creation evolution books, the end times books. And I've had many emails, messages, people just, telling us how blessed, especially on the end times book, a lot of people that have actually converted and changed views because of it. So amen. Praise the Lord. If I could remind you, I'd really appreciate it if you get onto Amazon and you've read the book, you've purchased the book, but you haven't given a positive review yet. These reviews on Amazon really do help. And this week, I think there's been 3 or 4 novel reviews for the End Times book. And I really do appreciate that. So if you've picked up the End Times book or you've received the ebook of End Times Revealed from myself for whatever reason, I'd really appreciate it. Just takes a couple minutes. Go over to Amazon and you can leave a review for myself, a review for the ministry. That always helps out. Okay, well, with that, guys, thank you so much for joining us for, I would say, a pretty epic debate. I had a lot of fun. 2 hours really flew by. David versus Kent. This was their debate trilogy, and this culminated their debate trilogy. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the questions, and God bless. Standing for Truth is out.